So, Michael, easy question to start. How do you reflect on your first 9 months in charge of Stoke City?
It's been very enjoyable. It's been challenging, which I knew it would be. And ultimately, we've achieved the first part of, the reason why I came to the club was to keep the club in the championship. And having done that now, we have to look now at the future and build the club back to where I believe it should be. So overall, it's been, I suppose, in a way, we can take a lot of satisfaction from the 9 months. There's a lot for us that I think we did well. There's things that we need to improve on, and things in general that the club needs to improve on as well. But the priority when we come through the door was just to get enough points to stay in the division. And having done that, obviously, we can start to address some of the other matters now.
Can I take you back to November when you first arrived and the win at Barnsley after one training session? How much did that convince you that you'd made the right decision to join the club in the first place, or were you worried that it might just have been a new manager bounce?
I think you're always worried the new manager bounce, but the most important thing was you win the game, and I think what it did do, I think it got us instant buy-in from the players. We changed the system with very little time to do any work on it. We brought one or two players who had been on the periphery of things under the previous manager, and all of those things are good. If you get a result, players start to believe in that, and so that's why it was important. Obviously, there was a huge travel and support that day as well. So with that in mind, it's important that they see something which gives them a reason to be positive, gives them hope as well. So it was a very important game, that, and like the first game is always important. Had we lost it, it wouldn't have been a disaster. But the benefits of winning it, having just come in on the Friday, meant that I think it jumped us up the ladder a few steps.
So you'd had 8 years in international football, and initially when you came to the club, you were combining the two. But how different was it to be working with players on a day-to-day basis, and as you say, getting that buy-in from them as to your methods?
Yeah, I mean, that's when we came in, we had too many players, and it became apparent to me that there was players that didn't want to be there. There was players that only wanted to be at the club if they were in the team, but no player has their divine right to play. They have to be, they have to earn that, and they have to obviously be in good form to stay in the team. So, it became pretty apparent to me that, the likes of Peter Etterbo and Badu and Dye didn't really want to be at the club. They had tried to leave the club in the summer, and very quickly they were knocking on my door saying that they wanted to leave in January. So, we had to get the numbers down to have a workable group. We had three loan players that none of them really had much of an impact in the period they've been in. And I've been a loan player myself at a club, and when the manager changes, it's very difficult because, the manager who brought you there on loan is no longer at the club, and a new manager comes in, and that in itself is a difficult situation for the player. It's a difficult situation for the manager. So, I kind of identified that those players, if possible, we would cut short those loans, which we did. And then we had a much more manageable group of players to work with. Got some of the younger players around it as well, which is important, because in the early days, like the likes of even Tyrese, it was difficult to get him training with the first team. It was difficult to get, Lasse Sorensen training, even on occasions Nathan Collins. So just because the numbers were so high. So that was, I think, the first thing that we did, and a better streamlined group of players, more focused. And that was the first real challenge, I think, once we came through the door.
That must have been a challenge for you as well. Players coming and knocking on the door and saying that they didn't want to be a part of your plans, because that's something you would never have experienced as Northern Ireland manager.
No, that's right. I mean, the international football players coming, they're disappointed when they don't play. Sometimes you have discussions with them players make themselves unavailable because they don't want to turn up and not play and spend 10 days in a hotel or travel, and when they could possibly spend a little bit more time with their families when they're, on a bit of downtime from their club, for example. So those are the biggest challenges in international football, is keeping everyone committed. Because because they're not playing. It's not a financial thing. You don't have the same hold over a player that you would do, obviously, if he's under contract. You know, like it or not, the players have to come in to get paid. So in international football, it's a choice, and you have to manage the players in a different type of way, I think. But yeah, I mean, I had to deal with that. I had to deal with quite a lot of disgruntled players, and also I think, you know, but players that perhaps weren't motivated to do what they should have been for a club like Stoke City, given the financial commitment and the contract that the clubs had given them. So that was all part of it. I didn't, you know, that type of the job doesn't really faze me, to be honest. I'm happy enough to deal with players on a one-to-one basis, whether it be with the player directly or with their agent. So, you know, as I say, I don't have anything with that, issues with that. Probably the most difficult thing I had in the early time was, for me, was just getting used to the emotions of the games, because you're playing so much more regularly that you're up and down a lot more emotionally as a club manager. If you win and play well, it's great, and then 3 days later you play badly, and then, you know, it's finding a little bit of an equilibrium, a bit of a consistency in terms of how your mood is, and try not to be too emotional when you're picking teams, because yeah, and we tried to be that. We were consistent as we could be with the team. Obviously, if it's a really poor performance, it's difficult to roll the same team out again. But that was where I probably had found the biggest challenge, in dealing with disappointed players when they were at the team on a much more regular basis than you would do at international level.
I don't suppose you would have taken the Stoke job if you didn't believe that you could keep the club up. But I just wonder when the light bulb moment was, when you realised that, you know, it was achievable, that you could get the side over the line.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I felt that from the start. I felt that certainly, you know, when we win the game at Barnsley, you think, yeah, we've got something to work with here. And, you know, I was in a really strong position in the sense that I had, you know, 4 years left on my international contract with the Irish FA. I had, you know, a team that was going to be playing in the playoffs for Euro 2020. So there was a lot for me to consider, and there was a lot for me to give up. And, you know, I was going from a very stable job, which I'd been in for 8 years, to a team that was bottom of the championship. So there's a lot of risk to assess on that. But the main thing for me, as I always said, was, first of all, having met the owners and spoken with Tony Scholes, you know, and realising what the potential of the club was, because you're not in the Premier League for 10 years by chance. You know, there has to be a lot of things at a football club that are done right for that to be the case. And so there wasn't many jobs in the Championship that I would have taken, to be honest. Very few. You know, I did have opportunities to go into the Championship in the past. So I had been selective about what opportunities I would take to leave the Northern Ireland job, but as I say, having met the relevant people at the club, it wasn't a difficult decision to make at that point in time.